What is the worst piece of feedback you've ever received? For me, it's a toss-up between the boss that gave me a 2 on my appraisal, even though I was her top performer, just because I hadn't been there that long, and everyone gets a 2 in their first year. And years later, I had another boss who always used nonsensical words to give feedback on creative work. And he'd say things like, "This design is too liquid," or "The font needs to be stickier." But my brother really takes the cake on this one. He once got told that he needed to be more outspoken on conference calls. Now, that would be useless feedback for just about anyone unless it came with some kind of context or issue that might be solved by louder conference calls. But not only were there no actual issues with his work that they could pinpoint, my brother is profoundly deaf. It is hard to imagine a piece of feedback more useless than telling a deaf person to be more outspoken on conference calls. I actually called his old bosses to see if they wanted to comment on this story, but they were busy telling Stevie Wonder he needed to make more eye contact. This is Out of Office, episode 40. And this week, as you may have guessed, we are talking about the oft-overlooked topic of feedback. Over the past few months, as the entire world shares endless tips and tricks for engineering the perfect ChatGPT prompts, I have come to realize that the underrated skill of giving high-quality feedback is about to become one of the most bankable skills in business, especially for remote workers. Let me unpack why. In the simplest terms, every company's core objective is to deliver business results, right? And unless you're working alone, teamwork is critical to achieve those goals. And the most fundamental part of teamwork is communication. And the linchpin of communication is, you guessed it, feedback. Bear with me here. Feedback is to business results what a steering wheel is to a car. No matter how fancy the car is, how far away the destination is, how well planned the route is, or how fast you can drive, without a steering wheel, you're gonna crash. It takes 1,000 micro adjustments to reach a goal. And at every level, feedback is the difference between a direct route, driving in circles, going the wrong way, or ending up in a ball of flames. And so why do so many people suck at giving good feedback? I think there are 3 root causes. Firstly, words are subjective. What I say and what you hear are 2 different things. For example, when I opened this episode asking, "What's the worst piece of feedback you've ever received?" you might have thought I meant mean or unfair feedback. But what I really meant by worst was unclear and unactionable. And the second reason that most people are so bad at giving clear and actionable feedback is that they can't define what they want. They're like a cook who knows that their soup is not delicious, but they don't know that all it needs is a bit more salt. They can tell something isn't right, but they cannot pinpoint what it is and therefore how to fix it. And the third reason is that other people compensate for them by learning the skill of reading between the lines, extrapolating direction for themselves so that the shitty feedback that they got doesn't derail the work. This is a really super helpful skill to develop. I've built a whole career on it. You remember that boss who gave nonsensical feedback like making a design liquid or a font sticky? I eventually realized that no matter what he said, the issue always went away if I just made it blue. I guess he just couldn't tell the difference between things that are not good and things that are not blue. But he couldn't define what he wanted, and he relied on my ability to figure it out for him. But the receiver of bad feedback cannot fix that problem. They can only put a band-aid on it. And what I've started to notice over the past few years is that remote work has amplified this problem. When workplace interactions were more synchronous, there were more opportunities to notice and compensate for bad feedback. But when people are collaborating from different countries with fewer direct interactions, each one becomes more critical. And so managers who never learned the skill of giving great feedback, they're paying a higher price for that. They can blame remote work all they like, but it's a user error, and it was already there. Look, if you're one of those people, it's okay. I'm not here to attack you. I'm sure you're good at lots of other things, all right? But I am here to implore you to start polishing up your feedback skills because AI is about to escalate this from 0 to 100. And people who still can't give good feedback will be left in the dust. And that's because AI is powerful enough to give you just about anything you can ask for. But the one thing that it cannot do is read between the lines. It can give you what you need, but only if you have the ability to define what you need. And this means the skill of giving clear, unambiguous feedback is about to become a superpower. It will make or break people, careers and companies as definitively as a magic wand that makes wizards all-powerful and squibs? Well, they're still squibs. The good thing is, it's never too late to learn. Well, except for my old boss who's retired now. I hear you moved somewhere blue. I was tempted to wrap up this episode with a list of practical tips for people to practice that all-important skill of giving great feedback, but you know what? Let's try something and do it together. So my question for you is, what advice would you give someone who wants to improve the quality of their feedback? Wherever they're starting from, whether they're already pretty good and they want to get better, or they really are starting from scratch, like my boss would have been. Write your tip in a comment and then go through and upvote your favorite suggestions. I'm going to personally reply to the best ones, and we might even publish yours in the next edition of Radically Remote, which is our brand new newsletter for remote work leaders. And it already has 1 million subscribers. So remember, keep your tips simple, clear, and actionable. I'm Andrew Allen, and the future of work is out of office.